Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Redeem the Light. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation about how we can make Houston stronger and safer in the face of disasters. I'd like to welcome our special guests and our panel. First, Danny Asberry L., President and CEO of Solel International. Solel International developed a 12-point program for resiliency. Next, Christy Staples of Get Launched Communications Consulting. Let's talk about why we're here. Hurricane Beryl hit our community hard. Almost 2 million people lost power. Lives were lost, and the damage totaled billions of dollars. For a city known as the energy capital of the world, losing power like this is a big problem. But we're not here to talk about these problems. We're here to talk about solutions. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Well, we need a real plan, one that makes our energy system stronger, helps our communities work together, and makes sure we can respond quickly in an emergency. That's why we're excited to hear from Solel International, the team that created a 12-step plan to make our beautiful city more resilient. Solel International brings together professionals from the military, NASA, and the larger community. This team knows how to respond to disasters, and they use technology to do it. They use technology to help people prepare and recover. And so I want to walk through the 12-step energy resilience program. But first, we want to start with our why. Why does this exist in the first place? Well, again, Hurricane Beryl had a tremendous impact. At its worst, 1.9 million people lost power. There were 10 deaths and billions in damage. Even though Houston, again, is the energy capital we talk about, many of us were left in the dark. We need a better way to keep the lights on and our people safe. And so this plan is really about making Houston stronger for the next disaster, and we know there will be another disaster. It's led by Solel International, which has a proven track record of helping communities bounce back from disaster. Now, there's some key goals of this plan. It's to make our energy system more reliable, get communities involved in finding solutions, make sure our emergency response is fast and effective. And Solel International is a Houston-based company with global exposure and experience. They bring together experts from, again, the military, NASA, education space, marketing, and the arts. They're committed to making this a holistic solution, and they're committed to making Harris County the center of that. So there's an expectation that this will be a big investment, but it will make a difference for our city. And our expected outcomes are that there's better infrastructure and there will be fewer power outages. We hope to have communities that are prepared for emergencies. And so tonight, we're going to go through the first 4 steps in more detail. Now, there's a Northwood Manor pilot program that's suggested. But why? Why Northwood Manor? It's a neighborhood that gets hit hard by disasters. It's the right size to test new ideas. It has strong community networks. And what will happen? Well, community meetings and training will help facilitate this. Hope to have energy upgrades and local power projects and emergency preparedness training. And we hope that this all leads to fewer and shorter power outages. It's a model that can be used in other neighborhoods. Step 2 is the augmented reality disaster preparedness system. It's a high-tech app that shows real-time storm info and safety routes, helps people find shelters and get recovery resources. It will be rolled out in phases across Harris County, and it works with existing emergency alerts. People will be more aware and better prepared as a result of this. And the plan is that evacuation times will be shorter. The third step involves community power stations. Now, these are local power centers with solar, wind, and batteries. They can keep the lights on when the main grid goes down. And they'll work by being built in key locations over the course of 3 years. We hope that this will lead to power outages that are fewer, that will lead to fewer critical services being cut, and there will be more clean energy for our neighborhoods. And step 4, this is the NASA-inspired Community Resource Hub. These are places people can go in an emergency for power, cooling, medical help, and information. They work by using existing buildings and building new ones. And they'll change the amount of trips that are made to emergency room during disasters. Again, people lost their lives during the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Everyone will be close to a safe place in an emergency. Evacuation times will be shorter. The third step involves community power stations. Now, these are local power centers with solar, wind, and batteries. They can keep the lights on when the main grid goes down. And they'll work by being built in key locations over the course of 3 years. We hope that this will lead to power outages that are fewer, that will lead to fewer critical services being cut, and there will be more clean energy for our neighborhoods. And step 4, this is the NASA-inspired Community Resource Hub. These are places people can go in an emergency for power, cooling, medical help, and information. They work by using existing buildings and building new ones. And they'll change the amount of trips that are made to emergency room during disasters. Again, people lost their lives during the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Everyone will be close to a safe place in an emergency. Evacuation times will be shorter. The third step involves community power stations. Now, these are local power centers with solar, wind, and batteries. They can keep the lights on when the main grid goes down. And they'll work by being built in key locations over the course of 3 years. We hope that this will lead to power outages that are fewer, that will lead to fewer critical services being cut, and there will be more clean energy for our neighborhoods. And step 4, this is the NASA-inspired Community Resource Hub. These are places people can go in an emergency for power, cooling, medical help, and information. They work by using existing buildings and building new ones. And they'll change the amount of trips that are made to emergency room during disasters. Again, people lost their lives during the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Now, let's cut to the video that goes into more details surrounding the first 4 steps.
Step 1. Northwood Manor Pilot Program. Why Northwood Manor? It's a neighborhood that gets hit hard by disasters. It's the right size to test new ideas. It has strong community networks. What will happen? Community meetings and training. Energy upgrades and local power projects. Emergency preparedness training. What will change? Fewer and shorter power outages. A model that can be used in other neighborhoods. Step 2. Augmented reality disaster preparedness system. What is it? A high-tech app that shows real-time storm info and safe routes. It helps people find shelters and get recovery resources. How will it work? Rolled out in phases across Harris County. Works with existing emergency alerts. What will change? People will be more aware and better prepared. Evacuation times will be shorter. Step 3. Community power stations. What are they? Local power centers with solar, wind, and batteries. They can keep the lights on when the main grid goes down. How will they work? Built in key locations over 3 years. What will change? Power outages for critical services will be cut in half. More clean energy for our neighborhoods. Step 4. NASA-inspired community resource hubs. What are they? Places people can go in an emergency for power, cooling, medical help, and information. How will they work? Using existing buildings and building new ones. What will change? Fewer trips to the emergency room during disasters. Everyone will be close to a safe place in an emergency.
Now it's time to open the floor to our panelists. I'd like to start with Danny Asberry. Now, for those of us in the audience that may not know, what does resiliency look like to you?
Well, resiliency comes with being prepared. The issue that Houston had was that it was not prepared, and for the last 43 years I've been here, Houston has always had this thing about not being proactive. And so I wanted to do something about that with the military experience that we have on the team, including myself, with some of my NASA cohorts, some of our communications cohorts. We all put together an out-of-the-box plan, a people-centric plan to include all Houstonians. Because when the power goes out in Houston, only certain sectors stay up. But all of Houston, you know, you have far reaches of people that are in the southeast, people that are in Sunnyside, people that are in Northwood Manor, people that are in Scenic Woods. That's Houston too. So we want to make sure that everyone is included in that process, everybody's included in getting the information and being proactive. And not only being proactive, but to also do follow-ups after the plan is done, because only then we'll know how we improved and how could we mitigate future situations. So that's my take on resiliency.
Hey, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, Christy, I'd like to get your thoughts on how your organization could be engaged in this process, perhaps with resiliency. What role can Get Launched play in these next steps?
So resiliency is, in my opinion, the ability to bounce back and bounce back stronger and tougher. So in my line of work, we do communications, right? So it is the text messaging. I think it was well into the storm before we started getting text messages that, hey, y'all recognize there's a problem, or here's an estimate, or here's the number of people without power. It is the emails. It is being able to go to a website, which is a centralized website where we can find how many people are without, where can we get resources, how long are we estimating, is the actual power lines or is the actual pole, like what's the reason for me not having power? And so when you are open, the lines of communication are open, people will work with you. and people will feel comfortable and secure. But when people don't know what's going on, because me as a resident of Houston, when I would go to the website, I was like, this doesn't look normal. This is not the same one that I used to see when it would say, hey, these are the amount of people that are without lights. Hey, here's how many were restored. It wasn't like that. The actual website was totally different. And so I know if I was in shock, other people who had, medical needs or small babies or elderly, I know that they were in shock because they were like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. Nobody's communicating with me. So communication is key in critical storms. It's very critical that people understand, one, that I have a problem, and number two, how you're going to solve my problem, and three, how long it's going to take you to solve my problem.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Now it's time to open the floor to our panelists. I'd like to start with Danny Asberry. Now, I wanted to go into some additional questions that we have around communication and transparency. During Hurricane Beryl, many residents felt abandoned due to a lack of clear communication from utilities and companies. And again, Christy, thank you for addressing that earlier about how Houston would be able to bounce back better through better communications. But again, we also have to deal with the utilities companies. How can your organizations, this is for the whole panel, how can your organization ensure transparent, timely communication with the public during a disaster? And what lessons can be learned from last year's failures?
Well, one of the awesome ways is that in one of the steps that we had, I believe it was step 2 that talked about augmented reality, we can introduce new technologies in order to close that gap in the lack of knowing, so to say. So you can go on any mural, any surface, any calendar, anything, and you can get the updates real time, right? And so that's what we provide. We provide that clear path to getting the communication, to getting it real time, to making sure that nobody is left out. Because the problem is a lot of the companies were shut down, a lot of the websites. We were going through unconventional ways of going through Wendy's and Burger King's, right? And we were going through their websites, and we had better awareness than we did with certain companies. So we just wanted to make sure that we could provide that, here in the near future. We're already doing it with the Whole Foods mural on Independence Heights, as well as the Galveston Absolute Equality mural, where we were the first to create augmented reality surfaced murals in Houston and in Galveston. And so you can also take that same technology, that same mechanism, and you can put in your maps, you can put in your resource centers, you can put in your latest information, all of that, so that way you can get it at the palm of your hand, in your fingertips. So no matter where and no matter what, you'll have the information. The big deal is information.
No, that's amazing, actually. So could you speak a little bit more about the murals? You mean you're putting that technology on the walls?
Yes, so basically with our app, you don't need a QR code. You just need the mural, or you need whatever picture that you want us to plug in through the app. We could do that. We can trigger it and make sure that you can get all of the information. You can get the latest websites. You can get 3D models. You can get so many things. And I've actually had the privilege of becoming partners with Uncover Everything, which is also a minority-owned business that they were going, great for a while. They were just doing books and things like that. But I said, no, let's expand. And so I invested in that, and before you knew it, we were doing murals all over the place. And we even got some things going on in Bahrain and Brazil now because of it. So I'm very stoked about that relationship and the fact that it can benefit Houston.
Right.
So very happy about that.
No, thank you. Thank you for elaborating a bit more.
Thank you.
So, get to another question. The energy sector is often criticized for relying on antiquated systems during crisis. What steps can companies take to modernize their disaster response and integrate new technologies or community-driven solutions? And I mean, again, you touched on the murals, which I think is an amazing idea, but are there other ways that companies can perform that, can do that work? How can they integrate new technologies? I mean, it seems like we have a very antiquated system overall, and we were reminded of that during Hurricane Beryl. It seemed like during the period of the Great Freeze a few years back, we had a lot of those issues. So just what are some things that companies can do, or maybe your organization or yours, Christy, that can assist with that?
So I think the main thing is go back to this communication piece. Whatever way you need to communicate with your different audiences, right? So I know earlier we talked about the murals, but if you have somebody who's elderly, right, they're not going to go to the mural, but we can take that same mural, put it on a postcard, mail it out to the house, right? Because they still go to the mailbox.
Right.
So now we can still take that augmented reality piece. Now we're going to put it in paper form for your elderly population. But before it gets to them, you need to let them know it's coming. So there need to be commercials that are aired to say, hey, hurricane season is right around the corner. We want you to be prepared. Watch your mailbox. And you know what zip codes have the most elderly people, right? Watch your mailbox because they're watching the news, right? So you have to communicate in the proper channel, in the proper way to get your message across so that they will not feel like they're neglected or they're abandoned or that now I got to download another app or now I got to do another thing. Give them a magnet to put on their refrigerator. They will use that magnet and that postcard, and they would keep it up during the hurricane season. So I think when we go back to communication, it is huge, it is critical, and there's so many different ways to communicate with people. You text message them, you let them know what's going on in their doctor's offices and different things. Have bulletin boards. They still read the bulletin boards. So it's all about communicating with the right people in the right way. Ads on social media. I didn't see any ads on social media. I didn't see many updates on their Facebook, their social media handles, right? So it is all about using all communication channels so that you can have an omnipresent. I'm everywhere. You're on YouTube, I got an ad over here on YouTube in your zip code. Like, they can do stuff like that at low to no cost.
No, thank you for that. And thank you for highlighting the need for support as it relates to some of our most vulnerable populations. Because again, I have a number of family members in this community that are vulnerable. They're elderly, they may not get out as much, but they definitely check their mailbox, or they'll have someone check their mailbox.
They do.
So it's just being mindful of that. So thank you for that, Christy.
Thank you.
If I could also add to that one question as well, because, when Christy...
Danny?
Oh, yes. Thank you. When Christy was mentioning communications and she was mentioning everything that she was saying, the one thing that I thought about when she was speaking was communication and relationships. You have to make sure that if you are industry, you have to have great relationships with the people who are in the communities that you serve. You have to have authentic relationships. You can't have a relationship to where you think people are just going to come to you and they're just going to serve you and you're going to do whatever it is that you're going to do. You have to have a true relationship, a true connection with people. A lot of times where industry gets it wrong is that they are not necessarily people-centric. And so we want to make sure that we institute better pathways when it comes to dealing with the community and when it comes with dealing with industry. A perfect example is that when we did the Whole Foods mural, we created the Whole Foods mural, but it was a way to bridge the big box industry with the community. The community got to see people who reflected them on the wall. And so because of that, the community took ownership of the big box industry. And that way you had no graffiti, you had no vandalism, you had none of that energy happening to that big box industry, because they are selling to the community, but they are also creating ways in which they can enrich the community as well. So it's a great hand over fist relationship. It's a great, you scratch my back, you know, I scratch yours relationship with industry and the community. So they get a benefit, the industry gets a benefit, everybody wins. So if you move with that type of energy, then you can get better synergy, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Thank you. I think you hit the nail on the head as it relates to just the importance of reciprocity in these relationships. So that takes me to my next question for you both. Do you believe that it is necessary for private organizations to support resiliency plans, like the 12-point resiliency plan, or rather than just focus on their internal improvements and their own programs? And so I have a feeling that I know what you'll say, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that in terms of, is it a necessity for these private organizations, these private companies, to even be involved in that and to actively support something like the 12-point program?
Of course, they need to be involved. And they need to be involved by having a presence in the community. When I used to work in corporate America, one of the main things I used to gripe about was, how can someone who is sitting up high in the office with the corner office not ask the person who is doing the work, how can I make it better? When you ask people, how can I make it better, they're going to give you the ideas. They're going to tell you exactly what they need from you, because you can go and implement something that they don't even feel connected to, that doesn't meet their need. At the end of the day, it's about meeting the needs of your customer. And whether that's power, light, gas, water, food, whatever it is, people want to know that their needs are met and that I'm being heard. So if you come into the community and ask them, how can we do better the next time? You would have had a bunch of solutions that you could easily implement that will be low to no cost, and that will make people feel like, number one, my voice is heard, I'm seen, and my needs are going to be met.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, you know, the things that has been happening thus far with Beryl, with Harvey, with all of those other disasters, one thing is for sure, what has been working in the past is no longer working. So now we're here in the future, in the here and now and in the future. And we have to change up what we do. If you keep trying to do the same thing and it's not working, what they call that, insane? So we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward into a more proactive, more productive future. And so I think industry has to take a long, hard look at where things are going. And if they don't want a repeat of what's been happening in the past, you have to go with more innovative, new, fresh companies that are coming out of these small communities. You know, in Houston, we have a term here. We say enough is enough. And we're tired of being sick and tired, right? And so with that said, there's more and more and more companies sprouting, more and more community organizations sprouting from the grassroots that says that if you're not going to take care of us, we're going to take care of us. So that's where everything is going now.
No, thank you. Thank you both for that. So looking back at Hurricane Beryl, what should every company in the energy sector do or should be asking themselves about preparedness? What should they ask about their response capabilities? I'd like you both to answer that question, maybe just with one thing that these energy companies can do to address that.
Well, I'll start off by saying support the 12-step plan. Because if you do that, you support not only your own industry, but you support your city's resiliency. This is a plan created for the people, by the people, for stakeholders, even for them. Because at the end of the day, when you strip all of these things down, it's about the human experience. Aren't we not human? Aren't we not, who we are? So, with all the biases and differences aside, how are you affecting the next 7 generations of people?
Right.
What will your company go down in the history books as? The person on the right side of history or the person on the wrong side of history? How were you able to prevent this disaster from happening? Were you presented something to make it better? If you were, did you take advantage of it? Did you collaborate? Or did you just sit there and do the same things that you normally do? So people have to be aware of where they fall in that. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Corporations have to audit. They have to audit what went well, take that, and then you start to implement 12-step plans. Those are recommendations from the people that will help us meet our needs. When you do that, I believe we will have a win-win situation, because every relationship have a win-win situation. The companies, they're able to stay in business. They're able to continue to provide us with our power and our lights and our gas. And we as the people, we're able to feel secure in disasters. We're able to be connected in disasters, and we're able to get our needs met during a disaster time. So that's how I think that corporations should definitely hear from the people and implement some of the things they say.
No, thank you, Christy. And I think we've seen that these companies can't continue on the path that they've been on. It doesn't help anyone, and it leaves us all in more danger. So I'd like to shift to the unique aspects of the 12-step comprehensive disaster resilience plan. What makes it different from other approaches? And why should companies consider it the standard for their future?
Right. Well, we came through with a new perspective, right? It's more people-centric. If you look at the presidential elections before Obama, right, they were very much so industry-led, right? And you had the classic votes, you had the classic funding from the billion-dollar companies, and you had all of these things. But there was something different that happened with President Obama. That thing that was different was crowdfunding. When he made his campaign people-centric and the people bought into it, they supported him. And then he won. Companies today can win by involving the people. So with this particular plan, we've included that particular element. We've mastered that. It is a feasibility study for all of Houston. It is a solution-based study that companies can take advantage of, because it doesn't only benefit them, but it also benefits people. It benefits the environment. It benefits everything in its totality. So I think that will be a great way for companies to know that if you go with the people-centric aspect, if they do decide to be included in this particular plan, then their trajectory could go even higher than what they're currently experiencing now. So if you do a $1 billion hike or raise, on a community, if the community can say, oh my God, they helped us out, they included us, they made sure we felt heard, of course this justifies this. But if you've done the same old, and you continue to deal with the same old people and the same old companies and the same old things, then you're going to get the same old response. It's time to change the response. It's time to change the time. So even though it was unfortunate that Beryl happened, it did uncover a lot of things. It actually started with COVID. COVID really took the covers off of this. COVID allowed us all to see who the Wizard of Oz really was. And so now that we're at this point, you know, a couple of disasters in, we want to make sure that we don't repeat those same mistakes.
No, thank you for that. I love how you focused on the social responsibility piece of it. We need more socially responsible organizations that at least try to work with the community and to make that effort. So I do want to shift a bit over to kind of the multidisciplinary element of the 12-step plan, right? It involves expertise by individuals from the military, technology, community, activists, and the arts. Why did your organization believe that it was important to draw from these different areas to develop this plan, this approach?
Simply put, you have to think outside of the box, right? When we were in the military, we had to think outside of the box all the time. Even though we had our general orders, even though we had, you know, certain duties that we had to do, if you're in a tight situation, you have to think differently. You know, a man that thinks saves himself. And so if you don't think, if you don't continue to expand in the way you see things, you're going to be dead in the water. So would you rather have a ship that works some of the time, or would you rather have a ship that's advanced and it has all the things, right? And you're able to travel and go as fast as you want, as hard as you want, as long as you want? Would you rather have a ship like that, right? We are that ship, the people, right? And we have these ideas that people have never heard of, but at the same time, when you put them into practice, they're very innovative, and they can save lives. The city could save itself. The state could save itself. The nation can save itself by merely just being outside of the box. This is Barrow was a multi-layered situation, because we had direct show, we had the freeze, we had Harvey, we had this whole debacle of nature that poured down on us, and we were not prepared at all for any of this. The weathermen told us it was coming, but we didn't have the proper information, even going through the storm. Who was there for you? We have to rely on the old way of communicating. We have to have a better way. And this way is the better way.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for that. Yeah, you made me remember the Whataburger app that I had to utilize to determine where in the city there was power that existed. So want to shift again to something I like to call the hero moment sharing. So with our panelists, if you could, would you mind sharing a moment where your work made a big difference, or where you feel that your work can make a big difference in Houston's future? What will you do to be a part of the people and stakeholders centered plan that was introduced today?
So for me, it would be communication, definitely. It will be helping to think of innovative ways to talk to each and every customer, to come up with, catchy jingles, or just stuff that will catch the eye and make people stop to scroll on social media to get the information. Because now, with social media, you have to be entertainment yet informational, right? So combining those two, where all audiences can get the information, and then they can disseminate correct information, because we love to go to social media and get incorrect information and spread it.
Of course,
so
yes.
we want to make sure that they're spreading sourced information to the right people that need it. And also, too, This is a time to create a campaign or just create more connectivity, right? So how many of us just go into our garages and don't know our neighbors, right? So this is a time to really catch people doing good by helping their neighbors, right? So this is where you can really pull the community together and document the connectivity across a disaster. I think that's one of the best things that can emerge from something like this is really connecting the people during a disaster. So now I'm not looking at the corporations to create community. I'm creating community within my own, and then it flows outward.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Danny?
Well, that's why we're here to redeem the light, to redeem thought, to redeem each other, to bounce back, to be resilient, and to keep our lights on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's appropriate. Well, again, I want to thank you all for your ideas and your commitment to this process. Together, as we redeem the light, we can work together in making Houston a stronger and safer place for everyone. So I'd like to invite you all back to join us for our next session where we'll talk about the rest of the 12-step plan. Let's keep building a resilient future together for our city. Again, I want to thank our panelists, our guests, and everyone online for watching. In the future, please join me as we continue this important conversation. Again, I'm Will North. Thanks for joining us.
Stay prepared.
Stay prepared.
Stay prepared.
Stay prepared.
Welcome to Solel International's 12-Step Energy Resilience Plan, your ultimate guide to disaster preparedness. Let's hear what our community has to say.
This plan gave me the tools I needed for our local community.
It's a game changer for emergency preparedness communication.
Real-time updates keep us all connected and informed.
I recommend it to all disaster response teams.
Join the movement towards resilience today. Be prepared and stay informed with the 12-Step Energy Resilience Plan. Visit us now.
Join us today. Be a panelist member and change maker with the citywide people-centric proactive disaster preparedness plan with redeemthelight.com.